The Lebanese government has announced a 2-week state in emergency in Beirut. The cabinet has also asked security forces to ensure that no one tampers with the scene of Tuesday's explosion as investigations continue. Rescuers are searching for survivors in the city's port area as more than 100 people remain missing. Lebanon's President Michel Aoun has since declared 3 days of mourning.
Lost for words after the devastating blast, Lebanon's President Michel Aoun has described the capital Beirut as a disaster-stricken city. During an emergency cabinet meeting, he promised an urgent investigation into the massive blast, saying the outcome will be made public.
We are determined to investigate and reveal what's happened as soon as possible and hand out punishment to those responsible.
In the meantime, Aoun has pleaded for help.
I thank all the officials in the neighboring and friendly countries who contacted us and expressed their support for Lebanon and their desire to help. I urge them to speed up assistance to help us support hospitals, our devastated families, and to help us restore the damage that has hit the buildings and the Beirut port.
Initial investigations have revealed years of inaction and negligence over the unsafe storage of highly explosive material inside a warehouse in the Beirut port. This is said to have been the cause of the explosion, which killed more than 100 people and left 4,000 others injured. Officials at the port say several letters were sent asking for the dangerous material to be removed, but no action was ever taken.
And staying with that story, I'm now joined by Mia Verdoorn Shammas, a South African resident living in Beirut, to give us an update on the situation. Thank you so much, Mia, for taking your time to join us tonight. Just describe for us the scenes yesterday, because when we were looking at the visuals from South Africa, it really looked gut-wrenching.
It's to say that this is a catastrophe is putting it lightly. I mean, we live 10 kilometers away from the blast site, and it sounded like it hit our house. We felt our house shaking. Our neighbors had glass breaking, even from 10 kilometers away. So you can imagine people living within the range of that blast in the city, how they were affected by this. I mean, this blast was felt in Cyprus, which is more than 200 kilometers away. It's like an earthquake to them. So we cannot imagine the magnitude of this blast.
And at that moment, you're in your home, you're feeling the blast. What was going through your mind? What did you think was happening?
Honestly, you know, everyone knows about the political turmoil in Lebanon, and that it is a proxy for the other countries and their wars. So honestly, for me, the first thing that was going through my mind was, this is the start of a new war. This was an attack. It was a bomb. Because when you're living in Lebanon, that is a legitimate possibility, and that's something that you face on a daily basis, the possibility of that happening. Then as reports were coming in, we heard first that it could have been a methane gas explosion. Then we heard more about the ammonium nitrate that was stored at the warehouse in the port. You know, we also didn't know if it was a singular attack and if it could happen again. So you're scurrying, trying to find a bag to pack your passports just to be ready in case you needed to be evacuated. I have 2 small children. You know, my first thought was them as well, and trying to put them at ease with glasses breaking and things. You can imagine the trauma that they were going through as well.
And let's talk about the scene. Have you had a chance to go and look at it? Because we could see a lot of, you know, of just buildings, of cars that had overturned, you know, and mayhem as firefighters were trying to really, you know, put out the fire. And today, even seeing more of the devastation as you look through the scene.
I haven't personally been able to go down to that site because it is now being cordoned off by the army to preserve the investigation and so that nobody tampers with it. But from images that I'm seeing and just from personal accounts of some of my friends who live down in Beirut, it is pandemonium. Everywhere, every apartment, the glasses are broken, the windows are shattered. People had to leave their homes. There were over 300,000 families that lost their homes in a matter of seconds last night. Not to mention those who died and those who are still missing as well, and also, of course, those who are injured. Over 4,000 injured, 135 are dead so far, and still hundreds missing as they are trying to go through the rubble. It's just an endless task at this point.
And what are officials saying the situation is looking like in various hospitals? Because we do know last night they were already starting to feel the pressure.
Well, just to give you an idea of what was happening, I mean, our hospitals were already full thanks to the COVID pandemic. So when this happened, they reached their breaking point. They were making makeshift triage rooms and waiting rooms. We had an electricity cut, which meant that doctors had to perform brain surgery using their camera phones at flashlights. And of course, the main medical supply stock storage was also blown up. So we are in desperate need of medicines, not just antibiotics, but even life-saving medicines for cancer. The oncology departments are calling for medicines, and this country was already pushed to the breaking point with the economic situation, the political situation, and the pandemic. And now this, on top of it, was just the last straw. It's now at the breaking point.
And let's talk about Beirut, Lebanon, in fact, and the history that it has, because this is not the first. We've seen so many explosions in that part of the world. A lot of people continue to lose their lives, particularly in these explosions. We've seen car bombings, we've seen suicide bombings, we've seen so much happen there. Do you think that this, an incident like this has really set the country back, and can it recover?
Absolutely. This has set it back decades. I mean, we had the civil war, which wreaked havoc on the country, but the Lebanese were so resilient, and they always fought back. They always came out stronger. They're some of the strongest people that I've ever come across. But with this maelstrom of everything that's going on, I really fear for the country, and it is now the time that we need the international partners to come together and show their support, because I really fear for the Lebanese people. They are so hardworking, they are so resilient and so strong, but they have had enough. I mean, they were hungry, they were angry, they were scared before this, and now they are hopeless. And once they've lost hope, I fear that's pushing them close to the end.
As early as hours after that, that explosion, there were calls for accountability. Do you know what has happened on that front?
Well, the investigation is still ongoing, and they've been hesitant to point fingers too quickly and too hastily, because, as you can imagine, with this kind of explosion, with the magnitude of this catastrophe, they absolutely have to get this right the first time. They cannot afford to point fingers and preempt, a situation that's going to exacerbate it even more. So they are really trying to do this right with the eyes of the world on the situation, and rightfully so. This is the time that it needs to be done more so than ever. For the sake of those that died, those that are injured, and those that are still missing, and the country deserves that.
And what support has been there for South Africans like yourself living in that part of the world?
I've had an outpouring of support from all around the globe. It's really just been very heartwarming. People always ask me, aren't you scared to live in Beirut with the bombs and everything? And honestly, until yesterday, I was never scared. Sometimes I felt safer in Lebanon than I did in my home country of South Africa. But last night really shook us to the core, and it's not something that we will ever forget.